So, if you're a senior executive and you've been in the job search process for months, maybe even over a year, I want to talk to you today. I work with really smart people, senior people. They've had multiple teams, they've had $1 million budgets, right? And they are feeling stuck. And it's not because they're not capable, it's not because they're not good at what they do. The rules have changed for them entirely. And let's get into this. So, it doesn't matter where you are in the process. Every single thing I do with my clients sits on these four pillars. Pillar number one is believability. So this is self mastery, internal completely. Okay. And it's a very common mistake I see. The leader sounds really impressive, but when it comes to talking about their story, they are in the process of over explaining, hedging, downplaying outcomes, or sounding like they need someone's permission. So, believability is not confidence theatrics, it's clarity, it's leadership. If you don't fully believe in your positioning, the market will not believe it either. Okay. What does it look like in believability? We look at your strengths and how does it tie to actual stories where you've made a difference. And then apply this new persona on your resume and LinkedIn so that it speaks to your target people from your target companies. Okay. I can't stress this enough. The believability part is the foundation. And I applied this in my own career, even though I didn't call it the believability and the four pillars. I was doing my MBA from INSEAD in 2008 and I graduated in 2009 in the middle of a global financial crisis. Not the best time to graduate from a very expensive program. And just to lay the groundwork, right? As an Indian living in Europe for the very first time, I had no network. I had no work permit, which means then at graduation, after graduation, I would need an employer to sponsor me to be able to live in Europe. And I had no local language knowledge. I had come living in South America. I spoke Spanish fairly well, but zero French living in France for the MBA program or any other European languages. And I also had a newborn baby at the time, which meant that whatever networking events, cocktails, invites, dinners were happening, I was very mindful of my time and doing just whatever I could for my sanity and, you know, limited time available, which happens if you have a newborn, you know what I'm talking about, right? And in spite of all this, I managed to get five offers upon graduation from some of the best companies in the world. And I have to reiterate this. I wasn't really that smart at what I did. I wasn't like the best student. Um, I would say it was the opposite. I struggled academically with some courses. It was hard for me. But it really helped me because of the believability part. Okay. Because the other pillar I'm going to talk about is networkability. I couldn't do much there because, like I said, I didn't know anyone. So don't put this to the side and you're like, yeah, yeah, she got lucky. No, it's strategy here. Okay. So the second pillar is networkability. And most executives will tell me, I'm networking, but nothing's coming from it, right? If you look closer, what's actually happening is it's reactive conversations. Or it's very unfocused, sort of spaghetti on the wall, and let's see what happens. Or it's comfortable conversations. This is the patterns that I see. You're talking to interesting people, but are they really useful? So it's not about networking harder. It's about figuring out who you're actually speaking to. Why are you speaking to them? And how is the conversation being framed? Is there an ask? And what are you asking? How are you asking? All of that matters, right? So that's networkability. Now, here, networkability is where it gets really fun inside the program because you realize, you can't talk to everyone. You're not for everyone. So you have to choose because believability also helps you to decide who you want, who are you? What do you stand for? Who are you for? Who are you not for? So you're like, okay, I am interested in the pharmaceutical industry, or I am interested in fintech. That's where I have the most credibility. Okay, let's look at fintech. But within fintech, you can draw, deeper sort of niches and get into that. So networkability helps with one of my favorite efforts, focus. Because otherwise, like I said, there's spaghetti on the wall, and you're like trying to be everything to everyone. And we don't want random coffee hookups, and it's like coffee chat here and one coffee chat there. The only people who benefit from that are the owners of the cafes. And we want to be much more sort of picky and strategic with who we're talking to, why are we talking to them, and what are some outcomes we want every single time. When I tell my clients you're getting into a networking event or it's one-on-one, you always have an intention. What do you want from this meeting? Always. Do you want to be introduced to someone else? Do you want advice? Do you want another meeting with them? There's always an ask, and don't hesitate to do that. The third pillar is marketability, and this is where extremely capable leaders can often underperform, right? What'll end up happening is there's too much context given, or they speak a bit like internal operators, or they assume the interviewer is going to connect the dots. A client of mine once told me, I just thought Sonal, I just thought they'd get it. The thing is, at senior levels, nothing is assumed. Your job is to curate that meaning, right? And not to deliver data. So, there, the marketability, it's an interesting one because when you start getting noticed, you're showing up, what you say, which is the content, is just as important as how you say it, which is the delivery. Content delivery. And where the magic happens here is where we do one-on-one work together. We do mock interviews. I put on the hat of whoever they're about to meet, a recruiter, a hiring manager. I check out that person's LinkedIn profile. We do all that ethical stalking. So then we kind of like prepare for the worst case scenario. No one does badly when they are over prepared. Because if it doesn't work out, that's okay. But the effort wasn't wasteful because you put in that commitment, it will show up again in another interview. It's always helpful, right? But the worst thing to do is showing up and you're like, I'm going to wing it. I'm going to see how that goes. That's where a lot of mistakes happen because you don't always get a second chance to make a first impression. And this applies to a proper like job interview as much as it does to a preliminary executive recruiter chat. And you're like, it's just a recruiter. No, it's not. And we don't want to be too friendly with them because they're assessing us. They want to see, can they put us in front of their client? And we want to be just as prepared if it's an exploratory or discovery conversation. Doesn't matter. All of that is the same thing. They're assessing you. They're checking you out. So how you talk about yourself, how you show up, have you done homework on them? Is your research showing? Is your laziness showing? It becomes obvious pretty quickly who came prepared and who came to wing it. Okay, so that is the third pillar. And pillar number 4 is the hireability, which I call sealed deal. This is the least talked about. In the final rounds, most people think I made it this far, it's going to work out. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, right? And it's not about competence because you're so close. This is about perceived risk. It's about the fit. It's the energy. It's the leadership presence, all of the stuff which is unspoken, right? And this is where things can quietly fall apart. So these are the 4 pillars that I look at: believability, networkability, marketability, and hireability. Alongside this, because this is rinse and repeat, particularly once you've done the believability part. I'm not saying you do it once and it's forever, but once we have a good resume, LinkedIn profile in place, right? Then the network part, it's rinse and repeat. Interview, marketability, rinse and repeat. Then when it comes to diagnosing in terms of what's going on, I call this my do be framework. Do be. What am I talking about? The do, when I do with any client, is we map the funnel. The top of the funnel, visibility. We want to see, okay, there's dozens of applications going out, very few responses, almost no interviews. So this is not an interview problem. This is something is going wrong, right? So it's typically unclear positioning or very generic messaging or misaligned targeting. And we need to fix this because interview prep is irrelevant at this stage if this is not fixed. So the middle of the funnel is where the conversion happens, right? There's plenty of first rounds happening, some second rounds, then nothing. So when I diagnose here and I review these interviews, what we typically see is strong experience, very, unfortunately weak narrative, and there's no clear why you. The anchor is not very clear. So you're impressive, but you're forgettable, and that's a marketability issue. So there we need to fix that immediately. And then the bottom of the funnel, that's the closing. That's where you're like, this is really close. Then there's final rounds. There's references, great feedback, everyone's happy. But what? There's no offer at the end. And that's problematic, right? This is the hardest part, particularly emotionally. And the issue is rather subtle sometimes. It could come across that you're too eager, you're too cautious, or there's a misalignment with like leadership energy. So this is hireability. It's not skill. And then part two of this is the do. I'm sorry, part two of this is the be. Most people will be like, I'm doing everything and nothing is working. That's never true, you know, because something is working. But at the same time, something is leaking. There is a leakage. And our job is to guess exactly what that leakage is to plug it as soon as we can. Then the B, which is the part that changes everything. But it's uncomfortable. Why? Because so many clients are doing everything right. And they have the plan, they have the outreach, they have the discipline, the templates, the interview prep, and the structure. And still it feels heavy. I know, because I've experienced it. And this is where the being matters even more. So, what do I mean by being? So, this is what I mean. Okay. In real conversations, when I see someone's been looking for a while, stress starts to show up in very subtle ways. They're trying to fill up the silence, over answering, looking for reassurance, or negotiating too early, maybe coming across as a little desperate or tight, right? And senior interviewers can feel this immediately. So, this is exactly the shift that I coach. We move from, I need this role, to let's explore if this is the right fit for the both of us. Not easy. I said this is not easy. But this shift alone can change that posture. It changes the speech, it changes listening, and increases the perceived authority. Okay. So, when you're choosing, like, okay, I'm going to go with like a bit more peaceful energy, it's a strategy. It's regulating your confidence levels, right? So the magic happens when you do be and do together. Because the mistake I see most often is people are swinging in extremes. They're either doing too much of the do, which is the overdo of the execution and burning out, or too much into the mindset work and they retreat there. And then that's where they stall. So the work I do kind of stays somewhere in the balance because we want to sharpen the strategy, clean up that funnel, practice delivery, and stabilize that inner game. That's where momentum comes back. Okay. Doesn't come overnight, but the sustainably, when it does, that really helps. So if you're a senior executive and you're in active job search mode and you're feeling stuck, this is what I want you to hear. The answer is not more applications, not more panic, definitely not more self blame. You got plenty of that. The answer is more clarity. Clarity. Where are you stuck? Why are you stuck? Do you need the shift in the being or the doing or the both? So, this is the kind of work I do with my clients. Really smart, successful people. Okay. Now, which part of this has resonated the most with you? Is it the funnel? Is it one of the pillars? And in the funnel is being or the doing or the both. Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching.